done a video, so I thought I would do an easy one and rank the presidents. We'll see if I get through them all. I don't want to take too long in this video, but let's start. So, George Washington, number 1, and the best president, one of the best presidents. I give him an S. He was the man of the age, first president, and a lot of the protocols of being president were done by him. The president should be dignified, but not a king, calling him Mr. President. He led us through the early years of the Republic, which was not an easy thing. If Vegas was around then, they probably would have given us an over-under of 6 months on how long our Republic would survive. His farewell address of foreign entanglements was wise advice. We haven't kept up to that. We're all over the world, but during his time, it was necessary. Washington was the man of his age. He did not become king. The best president, and he gets an S. Number 2, John Adams. I have a soft spot for John Adams. I feel a little bit bad for him because he was a good man and an accomplished founding father, but you never want to be the man who replaces the man, like Tom Brady in New England. You don't want to be Cam Newton. You don't want to be the man who replaces the man, because you're never going to be good enough. I think he was a good president. Washington, in many ways, caused political parties because you could not attack Washington directly. You would commit suicide if you did. So how opponents of Washington's policies would attack him is by saying, oh, John Adams controls him or Thomas Jefferson controls him. So people got behind Adams and Jefferson and the political parties. John Adams was definitely not the man of his age, and so he was attacked by the opposite political party. Now, he did kind of an unpardonable thing for a founding father. He signed the Alien and Sedition Acts, which basically said he was able to put his political opponents in prison. And for a founding father to do that, that knocks him down quite a bit. He was instrumental in starting the Navy, and he kept us out of war. A lot of the war hawks of the time wanted to go to war with France, and he said America wasn't ready, and he kept us out of war. So I'm going to give John Adams a B. I know a lot of people that I see have him at a D, C level. Again, this is probably a little high, but I'm going to give him a low B. Third, Thomas Jefferson. I'm going to put him in the A category. He is the founding father of small government. He came in and slashed spending, cut taxes, and the deficit went down. One of the most important things he did as president was the Louisiana Territory, the middle of America. A lot of the middle of America came from his purchase, even though he didn't like big government, and the Constitution never specifically said that he had the power to buy land from Napoleon. Napoleon was having a fire sale, and Jefferson was like, oh, thanks, I'll take it. Just for that, he would get a B, but he was also a very good president. He did a lot of really good things in office. He gets an A. Madison. Now, I don't know why people have Madison at an A and a B. I've even seen one person that had him at an S. I think he gets, for me, a C. His policies were good, but he got us involved in the War of 1812, and we were unprepared. Our army was unprepared. We got the crap kicked out of us. America just got annihilated by the British. In our history, the War of 1812 was kind of a victory. In his time, he made it a victory, but we didn't really win any major battles until Andrew Jackson and Louisiana. Otherwise, the British rolled over us, and he was responsible for that. He was a good propagandist, and the peace with Britain was a draw, but it has become a victory in the eyes of America. So I give him a C. A good founding father, did a lot of other great things, but as president, I give him a C. Monroe, I give him a B. The Monroe Doctrine, which the doctrine that European powers were no longer able to colonize America, that it was off limits to Europe, and America would not mess in Europe's affairs. That became the Monroe Doctrine. He was president during a relative time of peace. I gave him a B. Now, John Quincy Adams, John Adams' son. He came into office in one of the first elections that was kind of crooked. He ran against Andrew Jackson and another gentleman, but Andrew Jackson scared all of the founding fathers, basically. Jefferson called him basically a madman. He was the Trump of his time, and when the election went to the Congress, they elected John Adams because he wasn't a Virginian. As you notice, they were all Virginia planter class, but he was of the elite Massachusetts class, and he was better than Andrew Jackson. And I give him a C. He was a decent president. Nothing special. Now, let's get to one of the most controversial figures in American history, Andrew Jackson. I wouldn't argue if someone gave him an S. I wouldn't argue if someone gave him an F. I'm of a split personality on Andrew Jackson. He did some really great things. He advanced the voting rights to all white males. Before it was just propertied males. He balanced the budget. We actually had a surplus under him. He's the reason why we don't have national banks. He was strong in foreign policy. But he did a horrible thing that's a black mark on American history. He signed the Indian Removal Acts, which said all Native peoples have to move west of the Mississippi. And the Cherokee said, wait a minute, we've got all these treaties with you. We've built cities like you asked us to. We've settled in towns. And you can't make us leave. And instead of going to war, they went to court. And they went to the Supreme Court. And surprisingly enough, the Supreme Court ruled with the Cherokee. And Andrew Jackson's response was the Supreme Court's made its decision. Now let it enforce it. And he removed them anyway, leading to the Trail of Tears. Terrible, terrible black mark. So I am really split. I'm going to split the difference between an S and an F and give him a C minus. I almost gave him a D, but he did a lot of good things and he was transformational. A lot of these presidents after him would be Jacksonian. In fact, he's considered like the end of the founding era and the beginning of the Jacksonian era. So he is transformational. It's just, I would give him an A or a B, but the bad things he did were too bad. Martin Van Buren, a career machine politician, was not a very effective president. He was president during a terrible economic downturn. I gave him a D. Just not a great president. Now, where is he? He was only president he gets an incomplete. He died about a month into office. Tippecanoe and Taylor too. That he was an Indian fighter before he was president, but he didn't do anything. I wish there was an incomplete here. I can't give him an F. I'll give him a D, incomplete. Tyler was interesting that he was a strict constitutionalist, not a really effective president. He also was one of the only presidents that died in the Confederacy. So when he was president, the South threatened to secede, and he said if they did, he would personally lead an army and go hang them all. But 12 years later, when the South did secede, he was a Southerner, so he joined the Congress, the Southern Congress. And I'm not sure whether to give him a C or a D. He wasn't that bad of a president, but joining the Confederacy after he was president, I have to give him a D. Now, James K. Polk. Surprisingly, a good president, one of the strongest presidents of his era. I'm going to give him a B. I almost want to give him an A. I'll give him a B+. He said he was going to be a one-term president. He was a one-term president. He was instrumental in getting Texas into the Union. effective president. He set out to do certain things, and he did those things. Very good president. Now, where is he? Next, we're going to go to Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor, again, gets an incomplete. He was only president for a year, so the incompletes I'm going to give a D. Fillmore was weak, and he's one of the causes of the Civil War later on. Some of his, I believe he was the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which said that a slave state and a free state had to join at the same time to keep balance in the country. I have to give him I'll give him a C, because we're going to have one of the worst presidents in our history next. The next two. We had two bad presidents in a row in a civil war. Who would have thought? Franklin Pierce gets an F. He was drunk the whole time he was in office. He died of cirrhosis of the liver. I give him an F, but I give him an excuse. His son was decapitated in front of him. There was a train accident that he and his family were on a train, and one of the wheels came off, one of the axles broke, and his car went careening down a hill, and him and his wife survived, but his son was crushed and decapitated basically in front of them, and he was already a drinker, and so the whole time in office he was just a drunk. And he gets an F, but he gets an F with an excuse. Now, Buchanan gets an F without an excuse. The country was descending into civil war. Civil war was coming. People could see it coming, and he did nothing. I compare him to Nero playing the fiddle while Rome burned. He was playing a fiddle while America burned. Well, Nero was playing a harp. He was probably playing a fiddle while America burned. Now we go from the two worst to one of the best. Almost, I'd say tied with Washington. Abraham Lincoln, one of the best politicians we've ever had as president. He was also a good communicator. He won the Civil War. He freed the slaves, and he was instrumental in civil rights. America would look much different if he had lived. His plan for Reconstruction, I think, was a good one. It's a shame that he was killed, because he was for giving rights to more people, almost everyone. He did do some things that were extra legal. He suspended habeas corpus and did some other things that were questionable, but he did it to save the Union. He gets an S. So we had two of the worst, one of the best. We go back to one of the worst again. I think he is the worst. The worst president we've ever had is Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson messed up. He did everything wrong during Reconstruction. We would have had a very different country. We had an opening after the Civil War to redo race relations, to redo how we see each other, to redo civil rights. And Johnson did everything possible wrong. I still get angry when I talk about him, because what he did had echoes to this day. So Andrew Johnson, bad. Even in his day, he was considered a bad president. He was the one that was closest to being impeached. He came within one vote of being impeached. I know Trump was impeached twice, but there was no chance of him actually being impeached. Andrew Johnson had a really good chance of being impeached. Now let's go to Grant. Now Grant doesn't get enough credit. Grant in his time was one of the most famous men of his age. His presidency was considered a success. It wasn't until the turn of the century that he kind of got an image as a drunk who was corrupt. He was actually one of the most honest men we've ever had in office. It was that he trusted the wrong people. So his administration, the people around him were corrupt and enriched themselves, but he did not enrich himself. And he did a lot of good things as president. He tried to reconstruct the South. He created the Justice Department to go after the Ku Klux Klan, and he was very successful, actually. You see the first African Americans getting elected to public office during this time. There was some advancement, but the time to actually really reconstruct things had already passed. And by the time that he was in his second term, the public sentiment was against Reconstruction. The soldiers had been there for too long. The Southerners were getting really resentful. And he wasn't able to accomplish what was needed to actually change things. But he was a good president. I give him a B and almost an A. Rutherford B Hayes, he ended Reconstruction. And he ended Reconstruction with a peace offering to the South saying, you have to treat everyone correctly and we will remove our troops. He tried to get the South to flip Republican. A lot of the Southern leaders at the time were sympathetic, but they could not run on a platform, on a Republican platform, where they wouldn't get elected. But he was a moderate reformer, so that's why I give him a C. Ending Reconstruction was not good because it led to the Jim Crow South. So he gets a C. He wasn't a bad president, and that election was very corrupt with Rutherford B Hayes. It was basically sent to a committee, and all of one political party voted for him, and the other political party voted for the other guy, and he won, and it was called the Corrupt Compromise. It was a very, very corrupt election. And let's go to Garfield. Garfield gets it incomplete. He ran on a reform platform, and he was going to try to reform the civil service because the civil service was corrupt. The deep state. We call it the deep state today. The civil servants. He wanted to reform the civil service, and one of the people that wanted to be a civil service officer shot him, and he died in office. And Chester Arthur. I'm actually going to give Chester Arthur a B. He carried out a lot of the reforms that his predecessor tried to do, and he didn't want tariffs because high tariffs. He lowered tariffs because he was embarrassed that America had a surplus. Imagine that, being embarrassed that America had a surplus. Just thinking about America having a surplus, incomprehensible to me. There was a saying, somebody said of him that there was no one that came into office being less respected than him, but no one who left office being more respected. So I give him a B. Grover Cleveland, the only one to be elected twice in non-consecutive terms. And I'll give him a C. Again, he had 2 cracks at it. He wasn't particularly good. He wasn't particularly bad. And let's move on to Harrison. Harrison, I'm going to give a C. A lot of these guys here, I'm not going to talk about that much with time constraints. I don't want to make this too long of a video. And if they're average, he was average. I'm going to give him a C. William McKinley. I'm vacillating between a C and a B. He did some good things, but he was very corrupt. Very corrupt. So I'll give him a C. Now, we get to one of the better presidents now. Theodore Roosevelt. I give him an A. A lot of people give him B's and C's. And he did have some alpha male, look at me tendencies. But he created the park services. He was Food and Drug Administration. He was a reformer. He was a strong president. In foreign policy, he was an expansionist. We almost annexed the Dominican Republic, Cuba. But he was a very effective president, very good president. I give him an A. Again, that's going to be higher than a lot of other people have him. A lot of other people have him as a B or C. And we have to talk about Taft. William Howard Taft was a supporter of Roosevelt. He was elected president. Roosevelt turned on him because Roosevelt didn't like some of his policies, ran against him, cost him the election. He was the guy that got stuck in a tub. He was so fat he got stuck in a tub, but he also became a Supreme Court justice after he was president. I don't think he was a bad president. I think he would have been much better if Roosevelt hadn't messed up his presidency. I'm going to give him a B, a low B, like a B minus. Now let's move on to Woodrow Wilson. I think Woodrow Wilson was one of the worst presidents. Oh, got to put him in a D. One of the worst presidents we've had. One of the most overrated presidents we've ever had. Wilson was a racist. He got us involved in World War I. He messed up the peace. He was so adamant on his League of Nations that he let France and Britain punish Germany so severely that Hitler arose and their economics were a mess, so it caused World War II. He is the one that really started the enlightened bureaucracy. He believed that bureaucrats should run the country, and they would be enlightened and smart, and not the case. Wilson gets an F for me. He might have been part of the Klan. We're not sure. He was very sympathetic to the Klan. Bad president. He's the one that his wife ran the country for a little while when he had a stroke. I give him an F. Harding was extremely corrupt. He died of a heart attack. He's the one that said, "It's not my enemies that keep me up at night. It's my friends that keep me pacing at night," because his friends were very corrupt, and so he gets a D. Calvin Coolidge. I actually give Coolidge an A. Surprisingly good president. Silent Cal, he was called. He was president during the Roaring '20s. Strong president. There was a reporter that came up to him and said, "I have a bet that I can get you to say more than 3 words." And his response was, "You lose." He was a very good president during a very good economic time in America. Now let's go to Hoover. Hoover, I give a D. He was a good man, a humanitarian. He just was the wrong man for the wrong time. When the Great Depression hit, he was a believer in small government, so he did not believe that government checks would help people during a time of crisis. The government's changed now. And so when the economy crashed, when the stock market crashed, when people lost their jobs, and shanty towns sprung up all over the country, they were called Hoovervilles because Hoover refused to do anything and he was president. The presidents tend to get blame if the economy's bad and, more praise than they should if the economy's good. Wrong man for the wrong time. Now let's go to Roosevelt. I give Roosevelt an A. I know a lot of the liberals would give him an S, and a lot of the conservatives are going to give him an F. But he was transformational. He led the United States through World War II, the Great Depression, although his policies, it's debatable whether they lengthened the Great Depression or helped during the Great Depression. A lot of economists say that his policies actually lengthened it, that it was only World War II that got us out of the Great Depression. And he wasn't perfect. That's why I'm not putting him up here. He started the Japanese internment camps. He was very egotistical. He ran 4 times. No other president had run more than twice because that's what Washington had done and set the precedent, but he ignored that precedent and died in office. And for that reason, we have a constitutional amendment that says you can only run for 2 terms. But Social Security was one of the most successful programs in American history because it gave money directly to elderly people, and poverty went from, I don't have the exact numbers in my head, but about 30% down to about 10% among elderly people because of Social Security. So very transformational president, very good president. I give him an A. Truman. A lot of people give Truman an FD. I give him a B. He had a really tough job. Imagine coming in and replacing Roosevelt. Again, you never want to be the man to replace the man. He was the man. And coming in at the end of World War II, he had to finish the war, make the peace. Difficult job. He did a decent job of it. He's also basically responsible for creating the State of Israel, or helping create the State of Israel, which some people might put up in an F, but it was very unpopular and very unpopular decision at the time. It might have cost him the election. But I give Truman a B. He was a decent president. Eisenhower, a lot of people have him up here, A, B. He basically helped build the interstate highway system, and he was president during good times, kind of a hands-off president. I will give him a B. A B. And Kennedy, I think he's one of the most overrated presidents. I've seen some people put him all the way up at S, which is ridiculous. A is ridiculous. I can see B or D. Only president for 2 years, so he gets incomplete. He got us in the Cuban Missile Crisis. He got us out. Bay of Pigs, I give him a solid C. He wasn't president long enough to do anything else. Lyndon B. Johnson, Vietnam War, I give him a D. He signed some of the Civil Rights Acts, which were good, but Vietnam was a big blunder. And we get to Nixon. A lot of people are trying to resurrect Nixon. He should not be resurrected. His decisions were pretty bad. He opened up China, which at the time was good because it split China from Russia. But obviously that has not turned out to be a very smart decision, as China is rapidly overtaking the United States in power, and they have not moderated any of their policies. So, and just what he did to the country with Watergate and corruption and how he handled it, he gets a D. Ford, he helped calm the nation, but I don't think he was a particularly effective president. So I give him a C. Carter, just bad. Just a bad president. Nice man, good man, horrible president. We had inflation, we had bad foreign policy, mistakes all over the place. He gets an F. Reagan, liberals are going to hate me for this. Reagan gets an A. He basically said, we have a better economy than the Soviet Union, therefore we're going to outspend them. We're going to build all these ships, and we're going to build our military, and he told the Soviets, try to keep up. And they tried, and their economy imploded. He was right. Ended the Cold War. We get Russia, but he ended a very problematic period in our history. And I know Reaganomics doesn't really work, and he had Iran-Contra, but he was a great communicator, a good politician, and he ended the Cold War. So he gets an A. George Bush the first. So he wasn't bad. He wasn't good. He got us in Iraq 1, but he was smart enough to say that there's no exit strategy, so we need to get out. I give him a C. He lost because he said no new taxes. He raised taxes. Decent president. A lot of people are going to disagree with this too. I give Bill Clinton an A as president. Horrible person. Awful character. A exceptional politician. An exceptional communicator. And I think his policies were good. He worked with Republicans. He was moderate. He tried to build consensus. Again, terrible person, but I'm not really judging by being a terrible person. Unless you're a terrible racist like Wilson was. He's not. You know what? I can't give him an A. I got to give him a B. Terrible person puts him down from an A to a B. The shrub, George Bush Jr. I'm going to give him a D just because of Iraq. Iraq was one of the biggest foreign policy blunders of modern times, and I can't give him any higher than a D just because of Iraq. He got us into war with a lie, saying that he still had weapons of mass destruction. And it's a place that we broke Iraq and we never fixed it. And we gave Iran basically the power in that area by taking out their enemy and not fixing the country. It was a boondoggle that cost us trillions and trillions of dollars that we could have been using in the United States. He gets a D. I almost want to give him an F, but he wasn't that bad in a lot of areas. Barack Obama, I'm actually going to give a B. It's really too early to judge him, but he was good with the economy. The economy did improve under him. Remember, it crashed under Bush, and it did improve under Obama. I'm not an Obama fan, but I have to give him some credit with the economy. He was bad for race relations, but he was also a very good communicator. Say what you will about him, he could speak, and he was charismatic and a decent politician. Now, let's get to everyone's favorite, Donald Trump. Now, for his policies, I would give him an A. I love his policies, his America First, peace through strength, confronting China, not kowtowing to China, but his rhetoric, I give him an F. For him being a politician, I give him an F. So I'm going to split the difference, just like I did with Jackson, and I'm going to give him a C. I just can't give him I can't give him these grades just because terrible politician. Great ideas, terrible politician. If they take his Twitter away, he would get a S, A, B, C, but his Twitter is funny sometimes, but it cost him the election because people said he was too mean. He turned all the media against him, the media that some media that was friendly. Great ideas, terrible politician. I think that's about it. For those 2 or 3 people that are going to watch this, let me know if you agree or disagree, and we can discuss why or why not. And remember, never to believe in anybody's propaganda, not even your own. Thanks. Bye-bye.